Okay, so guys, today you had the opportunity to have a look on how a citizen science or an educational, I would say, activity looks like when it comes to cleaning up and trying to do a very rough recording of the litter items. Obviously, as I explained yesterday, when you do a monitoring or a science, a more scientific survey, let's put it like that, you have to apply certain criteria, you have to follow a very specific methodology. And as yesterday I was explaining that when you are positioning your sampling unit on this beach, which is marginally 100 and it's a little bit more than 100 meter stretch, we would exclude from our survey the edges of the beach because they tend to accumulate. And here I have to say that it's quite a weird looking beach in the sense that we have a lot of different kinds of obstacles and it's difficult to decide what is considered here the end of the beach. So, for example, with Professor Skoulas we discussed a little bit about this. We would go till where the bridge is over there. This is what we would consider as the edge of the beach. But somebody else could easily consider, for example, this beach bar and the virtual line, which of course then would generate entirely different results because, as you saw, the majority of litter items were found further beyond the strand line. Anyhow, then one important aspect is that once you come at the beach, you have to sort of create the profile of the beach. And here we have one form, we call it the beach identity sheet. This you fill it for the first time when you go to a beach to do a survey because, as we said, monitoring means that you're going to revisit this beach at least 4 times per year. So the important things that should be recorded on this sheet are the total length of the beach, how does the back of the beach look like, whether there are cliffs, dunes, of course the GPS coordinates, because then afterwards we're going to create distribution maps for the coastline within a country or within a region or within the Mediterranean as a whole. Obviously the coordinate system, because this is another important aspect. Most of the results that I get, they are supposed to be beach litter surveys, and then when I put this in a GIS system, the beaches seem to be in the middle of the ocean. So you have to indicate what kind of GPS system you used, there are many, in order to be able then to put these survey sites on a map. Then, as Professor Skoulas yesterday said, we have to map the prevailing sea currents because we need to explore, once we have the results, whether there is any effect of the sea currents when it comes to the litter items that accumulate on the sampling unit, the prevailing winds for the same reason. Then, what kind of substrate does the beach have? Is it a sandy beach? Is it a beach with pebbles? Does it have bigger rocks? In general, as we said, the methodology opts for sandy beaches, but obviously not all countries have sandy beaches. So we have made a compromise to use also for sampling purposes beaches that have very small pebbles. But this is about it, because then rocky beaches are an entirely different story. They trap litter items, they tend to accumulate more litter, so it's more complicated and the results wouldn't be comparable with the results obtained from a sandy beach. And then another important thing is to map the different pressures of the beach. So, for example, we have to write down the prevalent beach usage. So it could be local people, whether they come for swimming or sunbathing, whether it's a fishing area, whether it's a windsurfing area, kite surfing area, etc., etc., and whether this is happening on a seasonal or a whole year round. And then we move on to some additional features, like what is behind the beach. Is it a road? Is it a pedestrian? Is it what kind of maybe vehicles are passing by? Whether there is a town nearby and what kind of town it is, whether it is a touristic destination and it's inhabited only in the summertime. All this kind of info is very, very important in order to interpret, for example, some peaks in our results, some outliers perhaps, trying always to find some kind of interpretation, some kind of identification and connection with the root cause of the litter items. In addition, for example, here we have a drink food outlet, which is this small snack bar. This is also some things which most probably, I don't know if it's all year round here. We have to put it down on our sheet. Then also the distance from the nearest shipping lane in order to see whether shipping activities have any impact, or whether the beach is in the vicinity of a harbor, because then sometimes we find items that have no connection with the kind of profile that we have generated for a beach, simply because they are impacted by other activities that are in the vicinity. And of course, here we have the example, the impact of a river. So we have to write down whether a river is nearby in order to interpret our results. Just to give you an example, a couple of years ago we were in a marine protected area, and we were finding medical items. And this beach was very remote, and theoretically we shouldn't find any kind of these items. And actually we did find very few items, just cartridges from shotgun, because there were hunters in the area, and then we found a lot of medical items. And it was very weird because nobody goes there. How did this, and then after some research we discovered that there was a river nearby, and then upstream, a very small river like this one, more like a stream, there was a small village, medical center, and apparently the people working there were throwing all the medical trash in this little stream, and it was then ending up in the protected area. So it was very interesting because, you might draw very erroneous conclusions if you don't know how the geomorphology and what kind of pressures and how in general your beach looks like. So this is what we do at the beginning. Okay, so now Professor Skoulas wants to say something.
Three things. The first is we have two activities, parallel activities here, to show the difference of an activity for young students, for pupils, and something that is for a monitoring. As Thomi said, for monitoring we don't take the edges. Here we specifically used the one edge just to show, because the purpose is to understand different mechanisms. So the rocky area is an ideal trap for certain types of litter. So we included that there. Of course, we had only one group that was exposed to this. Second is that the purpose of an educational activity is not at all actually to monitor. It's exactly what yesterday Thomi said. And this is why we cannot generalize, we cannot use this for monitoring purposes. We are going to demonstrate to you in a few minutes, when we empty, that things that are supposed to be recyclable are not of the quality that actually could fit to recycling. So this is one of the easy things that we can demonstrate. The other thing is, we have used in our groups, we have explained in our groups the different sources. Here we have is a place where we combine nearly all, not all, but many sources. We have the road, because the road itself creates some litter. We have the river, and most of the litter is around the river. We have the visitors, and we have also these two restaurants. We found also many, and we'll show you, you see some of them, some litter coming from the sea, particularly from activities of fishermen, and even you can see from what the divers brought ashore, some material from demolishing or construction and demolition wastes. So we have, from the educational point of view, a very good sample, and the students are perhaps too young to understand all that, we try to explain. In this case, we play mostly with the emotional, and we try actually to give them the feeling of discovery and also the feeling of action together. So it is not so much on the cognitive part or knowledge, but is mostly in psycho-kinetic and the other qualities and the other parts of competences. So as you know, we have 4 competences we want to build. Is the competence to be, the learning to learn, learning to be, learning to work with others, and what I left out, and learning, and most important, learning to do. So here we have mostly learning to do, learning to work with others, but also to be, because each one of them became a little bit more confident about himself, herself, on what they can achieve. The cognitive part is there, but is not so strong. So this is the educational part. What we want to do, of course, is to continue this in the school with the support of the educators. We don't know how much we can achieve. We usually try to keep in contact, and we will go back with some of the results and eventually some videos that we can make a synthesis actually of important parts, and this is the educational cycle that we are trying to do through this activity. And then in our work in the biosphere reserves, we use and exchange this experience with other biosphere reserves in other parts of the world, and this is the multiplier effect of this kind of activities. Now we come to the more scientific part. Because of the limitations that I explained before of the design, because the design was for education, we try to extrapolate that, and now we are going to do something in addition, which is correcting, adapting the de facto mistakes done in the way in which we have collected the different things, the sampling, and make it useful for scientific purposes, for monitoring, if in case that this is going to be monitored regularly 4 times a year, ideally, or more. So the first thing we'll do is perhaps we start with showing the difference, but you can perhaps, if you wish, to continue with this, and then we can.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just now, here is the survey sheet, okay, where before you start the classification of the different litter items, there are a few things that you need to note down that will prove helpful later on in interpreting your results. So first of all, one important thing is to note whether you have diverted from the 100-meter stretch. Actually here today we did a 50-meter stretch, because then you have to extrapolate the results and report your results per 100-meter stretch. This is the reporting unit agreed at pan-European level. So the reporting unit is items per 100-meter stretch, and for scientific purposes people tend also to report items per square meter. So this is why you need to also measure the size of the sampling unit, so not just the transect, but also the width, in order then to be able to express your result per square meter per surface area. But just to say that this is more meaningful when the majority of the pressures, the majority of the release points of the litter items are in situ. This is what it makes sense, because if they're brought by the sea, having these litter items expressed per surface area is not so relevant. So this is another factor. Then you need to note down whether any of the some conditions, weather conditions, have affected the number of items. For example, whether there was wind, rain, snow, something before the actual survey. Because just to give you an illustration, we have been monitoring one beach for quite some long time, and then in one event, one survey, we found the beach full of very small polystyrene pieces. If that would be our first survey, basically the beach was covered with these polystyrene pieces, we would say that this is a heavily impacted beach. But the reality was that in a 2 years long monitoring activity, this was just one instance. So you need to make sure that you keep all important facts and figures in place in order to be able later on to take out some outliers values. And this is what we did in our case in order not to have then calculated this within the mean or the average and come up with an erroneous density, let's put it like that. Yes.
Attention here. For the monitoring, we want to keep the exceptions out. But for the management, we need all the exceptions, because these are the extreme cases, and these are indicative of the higher dangers or the higher extreme weather conditions. So we need to have also this, not to include them in the monitoring, but to keep them as important events for the management, for extreme actually conditions.
Okay, I think that now it's time to bring in the litter. So here we just put out some of the litter items.
And what you can see immediately, these were from blue.
Was this from blue?
Both
were blue,
okay,
yes.
we need to have some
One black.
Things
are not, because we talk about recycling, but there is not just one sort of recycling, because mainly when we talk about recycling among ourselves, we refer to mechanical recycling. But there is also chemical recycling, for example, and I think thermal recycling. There are other types of recycling. So the thing is that one of the success stories, let's say, of circular economy, which is the recycling of fishing nets. Okay, this obviously is not mechanical recycling, it's chemical recycling. They take one very specific type of fishing nets, not all fishing nets.
Nylon.
Yes, nylon 6. Then they depolymerize it, okay, into oligomers, and then they use it as raw material for synthesizing new plastic items. So it's one thing chemical recycling, it's another thing mechanical recycling. And in fact, to date, from a life cycle perspective, we are not yet really sure what is the environmental impact of chemical recycling of this kind of materials. So a lot of things that are, oftentimes said the success story of blue economy, I mean, we should look at everything in a more critical way, because things are not so straightforward. And this actually brings me to one question that I got from you in the morning regarding that we hand out plastic bags and whether it would be better to give them textile bags. And in fact, from a life cycle analysis perspective, it has been shown that one cotton bag, in order to outweigh its environmental impact when it will be compared to a single-use plastic bag, I think that it has to be used more than 164 times. Okay, and the question is, do we, these cotton buds that we hand out so light-hearted in the conferences, okay, I have a collection, big collection. Do we really use them 164 times or more in order to outweigh the impact that they have with the plastic? I mean, just this, I don't draw a conclusion, it's just food for thought.
This is the critical thinking, because in many cases, theoretically at least, if we can recycle this, it is better than using glass, because we can have something light, but to be used for full recycling. And this is something that is not easy to pass to children at this moment, to differentiate and understand all these things. So sometimes this is a discussion for experts at this moment, but it is important for experts to know that, because, for example, if we manage to recycle all these bottles, it is much better, because this is a reshaping before coming in contact with the sea, and is light, and the fuel, let's say, for used in a van full of that, in comparison with glass that needs to be washed and reused.
Reused, so
And
not
reused.
recycled.
No, and even reused.
Even reused.
Yes.
Washed from its dirt.
This cannot be easily
Not
used. If it is, because it's clean. If it is used immediately after, from water, immediately after, then the only thing you need is to melt it and reshape it.
That is recycled.
This
Yes,
is
recycling.
recycling. But anyhow, this is just a parenthesis. We don't pass this message because it might be confusing for people, and there are so many different other types that are not actually in this category. This is why also in the European Commission, bottles are still in a gray area to be decided. It is not yet decided as other single-use plastics, because of the great amount of these items and all these discussions behind, which to a certain extent, of course, are influenced by different lobbies. But we are talking about now real science. So we
Okay.
can.
So you just wanted, because now we have a sample from the black bag, because
The
you
black
wanted to make
bag,
the comparison.
you see that indeed is different. They are really, I mean, it's very difficult to identify any single thing to be recycled. However, in the blue bags, there are many similar things to the ones there, showing the difficulty, particularly for students, to identify and decide what should be put where.
Yeah, because I also experienced that it's very difficult, you know, because as I understood, they have been taught that plastic is a recyclable material.
Yeah,
It goes to the blue bin. This is
yeah,
how they are
this
taught.
is, yes,
And then,
because
for
of this.
example, straws, for example, don't go to the blue bin, the straws, because
Yeah.
they generate a problem in the mechanical sorting of the litter items. So it was very difficult then when they showed me a straw and yet they told me, can this be recycled? Then their teacher said, is it of plastic? Yes. Then they said, recycled. And then I didn't know what to say exactly at that point. Should I swallow it and
Yeah.
say nothing? Should I say, yeah, in another country maybe? I don't know.
Yeah,
I
but
didn't know what to say.
it's not the purpose, as I
Yes.
explained before. The purpose, it's okay. Even with these mistakes, it's okay.
Anyhow, so we see that some things that they put for recycling are not actually recycled. Like here they put the mask.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyhow, let's now go back to our recording sheets. All right.
Yeah.
So the idea here would be, in order to make our lives easier, to group things. Okay, we try to do some very rough grouping, but we would be grouping the things together. So, for example,
All the bottles.
all the drinking bottles that are small would go together. Okay,
Some of you may
may
also
participate.
may participate in that.
Okay, even though this is a weathered bottle, it's still a drinking bottle.
And even the parts of it, even parts of these,
Even the fragments,
In
as
the
we
fragments.
said, if they can be recognizable, they will be classified in the category that they are perfect.
the cups,
Okay.
the cups.
Then we have single-use cups. Okay. Two. This is from a drinking bottle. It will go to the drinking bottle.
This is also plastic.
This is from
bottle.
salt. Okay.
This is there.
Okay. Is it from plastic? Okay.
It's plastic. But it's corroded.
All right. And then we have some cups. for example, I don't know from what this cup could be, but it's not from a drinking bottle. Neither is this, and this is from sun cream. This we will put separately, and I will explain you some things. So, because somebody might wonder why we don't put all cups together. Because first of all, some cups might be coming from drinking bottles. Some cups might be coming from detergents. Some cups might be coming from chemical fluids, and some others, for example, like this, comes from a sun cream. Okay, what we will you might tell me then, okay, this, for example, is originates from recreational activities. Okay, from sunbathing cream, and then this from, let's say, I don't know, from a water bottle most probably. And you might say, why to separate these two? Okay, obviously this is difficult to phase out from the drinking bottle. But this, for example, if you may have seen, this is a spray. And then it has this on top, not to collect sand, etc., etc. So this idea, if it's recorded, it can be brought back to the designers to design the bottle of cosmetics in a more sustainable way, you know. This is actually, I never use it. The first time I get the sun cream, this I throw it immediately, because who does that, you know, taking the sun cream and then having this little cap and put it. Yeah. Oh my God!
Many people, many people do.
So another way should be found, and this is actually another issue. This, people tell me, why to record this separately? And actually, I don't know if you may have noticed that it's once like upon a time, when you would detach the cap from the bottle, this would fall apart immediately. And nowadays, this stays here. This is actually because of this kind of surveys. It was brought to the designers, and they redesigned the bottle so this ring stays on the bottle.
This now is becoming compulsory. I mean, some of the designs will, by I don't remember which year, it will not be detachable. The same was, the most important was with the tins, the cans, the small ones. So where in some cases they remain on the package, on the.
So. As I was trying to explain yesterday, when you do this grouping of litter items together, then easily the majority of the litter items can go away, in the sense that then you go, for example, where you have your drinking bottles.
You have already here, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about, I don't know, perhaps more than 10% of these items are bottles.
Okay, so you note this down. Okay, the majority of them are smaller.
They're smoking there, the butts of, you see, there are
and
many.
then we move to the cigarette butts, for example.
Cigarette butts.
Okay, and
there are many there.
The majority of the litter items this way will very quickly, like within half an hour, will be removed from the list. Okay, and then there will be some other things. Mainly, we spend a lot of time with the cups to try and understand what kind of cups we have in order to see, okay, it's more straightforward when you have the water
this
bottle
is not
caps.
A cup.
This is a ring of something that maybe used to be a cup or something, had a cup attached. So, do you want us to go through, just to have, and one quick way is that you go through the list and then you see whether you have any of these items. Okay, so for example, and
you
this
may
is also a way.
Bring some more of these and ask you to get and do this yourself. So, for example, this can be an adapter. It can be an adapter, it can be, all these are important information for a particular beach. If you find several of them here, there is an activity, a source that is important. What we didn't mention before are these bins here. These may become secondary sources of littering, because people consider that everything is going to be collected there. Yeah, they are full. If there is a strong wind, all this is redistributed.
Exactly. So actually, this is a non-optimum type of trash bin for the coastal environment. So in fact, And because here we're not maybe so, even though we have winds, if you move more to the Nordic countries, no, you nowhere see this kind of bins. The majority of the bins are buried, first of all, down in the beach, okay, and then
covered.
they have caps, some tops, but also the way these are made, they cannot be detached. So you cannot just open it, because this is a very classic thing in our country, I don't know in your countries, even in the common trash bins. People are disgusted to open the lid of the trash bin, so they go and leave it open. So then it rains, all the recyclables become wet and they're useless for recycling, or I don't know, animals go and take all the trash out. So in the Nordic countries, for example, they have foreseen this, and you cannot detach the lid of the trash bin. So at least whatever goes in the trash bin stays
This
in the
is
trash bin.
actually this piece is from a bottle, Harris. This is from a bottle, burn, because they that's it.
Yes.
So it's
This, for
melted.
example, it would go to be recorded with the bottles.
And this is a toy.
Yes.
I would like then this is from most probably fishing. You know,
Yes.
all this.
But also
Polyurethane.
it could be a tray, how's it called? A tray where you put, for example, your coffee to go cups. In some areas they do that, so you
Yeah.
don't put your cup in the sand. So they give you a coffee to go cup, a straw, a plastic drinking bottle, and then a tray to put your coffees inside.
Yeah. I would like to see a little
You mean
bit
the one with the holes?
one of the
Yeah.
red. To
It's
see,
a crime
to
against
compare
humanity.
them. To compare them with, you may put them there. To compare
Even
them
though
with
it's
what
paper,
we
right?
saw in the.
Yes. And since we had also the diving activity, because I think that this is also interesting for a marine. I don't know, biosphere reserves have also marine parks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not all of them.
But some,
In,
okay.
I mean, Asterousia has.
Because the approach, the methodological approach is quite similar as the beach. The divers go in the water, they define a sampling unit that has 100 meter stretch, and then they survey 2 meters width on each side of the transect. And they collect all the items in this
But,
transect and
just
they
to
bring
keep
them
it
ashore.
before
there.
before we mix them. Just leave it there, so to see.
The
Actually,
differences.
you see differences, but in general they are, in principle, heavier items. But you
Or
can see
heavy,
also,
yeah.
yeah,
And the rectangle is actually
Yes, this is also another thing.
this is yeah.
But it depends also where, I don't know how deep they went, because usually the findings of the seafloor surveys with scuba divers are very similar and correlate well with if they are at coastal waters, they correlate very well with the findings of the coast itself. If they go deeper, let's say, I don't know, far away from the coast, if we're talking about relatively shallow waters, you will see that the types of items might not correlate so well with the beach litter related, because maybe they have other types of pressures affecting the types of items that they find.
And of course, we are talking about the Mediterranean now, because
Yes, of course.
there are no tides, as you know, in the Mediterranean. We have maximum 30 centimeters. And it is totally different if you are talking about the Atlantic, and there you bring in totally different items. And so what you can say here about the differences, if you combine this the observation of this tube. This tube is from construction, demolition and demolition waste. Is for electric, they put in order to put the electric wire inside. If you combine it with what we saw there, which is iron roads for construction, this shows that this comes from, sorry?
Not from electric.
It's not?
it's water.
Is it the
Unless
watering?
it is
Irrigation.
for irrigation. Yeah.
Okay,
So in fact, this is a different source.
totally.
Both show that at least one part of this offshore system is influenced by something that we didn't see here. So probably it is from a different catchment. Perhaps the next catchment is different, Perhaps there are greenhouses there, perhaps there are some construction, demolition, waste, and then, so this is the real difference. For the rest, we cannot say easily.
So, why are we doing all of this? Does anyone remember, first of all, based on what you see here, okay, is this beach in a good environmental status or not? On the basis of what I said yesterday.
It was 20 liters, right? The limit.
20 liters.
So, is it in good environmental status?
Yes. I think yes.
Yes?
How much 20 liters?
I'm not talking in general. I'm talking on the base of
You
the
mean
threshold
what-
value that has been set at pan-European level, that the beach, in order to be in good environmental status, it should have...
You mean the beach?
Yes,
should
yes,
have?
yeah.
Oh, then
But it
it's
was 20
just it was 50.
20 liters for the 100 meters.
Exactly. So, if you double this,
So this should be that. It's 50 meters, right?
yes, and we have found roughly, if I just, it is more like 500 items per 50 meters, so we have 1,000 in this beach that seemed to us very clean in the beginning, and we were afraid that we are not going to find anything.
When we were
So,
down.
just to tell you that, because so far I've never been in a beach that I never found anything, okay? Even if it has been cleaned 5 minutes before I stepped into the beach, you always find more than 20 liter items. So this means that really we need to strive in order to keep our beaches in good environmental status, and we are not yet there, okay, in the majority of the beaches. So this is one thing. Then, in terms of management, let's say that this was, it's part of the protected area, and you find these items, and you need to do something. What would you do as a priority measure? Because all of this exercise is about connecting items with measures in order to stop to phase them out, to stop seeing them on the coastline. So, first of all, I hear from you, which items would you focus on? You can pick 1 or 2 or 3, and then tell me what kind of actions would you design in order to phase them out.
Well, as at the first glance, I would say that the highest pressure is obvious touristic pressure, because we have water bottles and hookahs,
Cigarette butts?
cigarette butts. So I think that the first thing to see is what are the facilities in place that they are providing shelter for tourism, like the snack bar, what kind of bins do you have, and then try to convince good practices for them. And then probably having a sign of sensibilization to the public. Don't drop your butts or something.
We're watching you.
No small.
We're watching you, I like it.
What you don't see here, you don't see any sign of management. You don't see the management. Even if there is a management even if they clean the beach, you don't see it. So this is important, that because the feeling that of the maintenance and care is very important for the management of an area. So all what we said about this, the management of litter and the bins is important. I don't know how much the two enterprises here, because these are tourist enterprises, small, are part of the solution or part of the problem. So it is important to work with them from the very beginning, and make them part of the solution, in the sense that their capital is the clean environment of this area. So this is important. It's not clear, and we can check with what they use actually. Do they use something that is contributing to this pollution? Or
Plastic cup, plastic
That's what I saw.
straw, everything was
It's plastic.
It seems that there are different types of plastic cups over there, but it's not the same, so it's most likely-
People bringing maybe their coffee.
Yes.
For them.
yes. Also from there are many
Underway.
many cars during the summer coming here with their own.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
it's very not a very nice thing here, this bridge, because there is this, I dare say, Balkan tendency to throw things out of the window. I don't dare say Greek or Cretan because I don't want to insult anyone. Let's expand it a little bit. But it's true, you know, one of the major problems, if you go along the highways, you see full of trash around the lanes. And then how do you deal with that problem? Because, okay, if you have a very localized situation, like here, let's say, and you manage to be successful, still, what Professor Skoulas was saying, that this, you know, when a beach looks kind of abandoned, because of course if people throw trash from the highway, and as we see there are just 3 trash bins over there almost hidden, and here, you know, they might overflow and nobody's taking care of that, then people say, oh, okay, it's not so clean here, so they don't pay really attention. While if you go in a beach that it's, you know, spotless, that everything looks super, you know, clean, then obviously your mentality towards this place is entirely different, you know. You don't act.
In the management, in a park or in a biosphere reserve, depending on, of course, the personnel, because biosphere reserves, as you know, are huge. The Asterousia Biosphere Reserve, which is not as big as other places, is 1.5 times the size of Malta, so of the entire country. So you understand that whatever authority you have is not able actually to monitor and maintain every single piece of this. So it is very important that at the same time you build the self-respect of people who live there, and they go after a tourist or other
Citizens
saying
monitor citizens.
exactly.
That's what happens also in terms of security, of
Exactly.
city life and crime control and everything. When the citizen acts like a co-citizen
Yeah.
and monitors and
And it's not it's just a
And you don't need,
a friendly advice
an army
or
of-
yes,
Exactly.
warning
it can
or
be
something
discreet,
like
it
that.
can be friendly, it can be not
Exactly.
critical.
But I have another question for you. Okay, you mentioned that you would focus on cigarette butts. Any specific measures that you could think of in order to solve the problem only of cigarette butts, which is a huge problem in the Mediterranean?
Yeah, there is this initiative that I found quite nice, the WOPA project.
Yes.
So you have dispensers where you can vote with your cigarette,
Yeah.
which is a positive message, like vote what's your favorite animal of the sea or things like that. And they are holders as well for recycling. So something like that in the beach could create a positive feeling for people rather than like don't throw that away.
Yeah.
And also I don't see ashtrays.
Like a nudging bin.
There are no
Yeah.
ashtrays.
There are no ashtrays on the beach bar, so people. And actually, if you see around the
They are
highest,
all around yes,
all around the umbrellas and near the beach bar are the most of the cigarette butts.
Yeah.
So it means that they don't have an option where to put them. So you need to give them an option that probably should be covered from the wind as well
Most
and
people
regularly emptied. That's something I can think of.
Okay, how about, you know, because this is another. Yes, of course.
Say something. Maybe it's also lack of education. In Romania, for instance, they believe that these are biodegradable.
That they're paper.
They just leave it there because in some time they will disappear. And this is a matter of education. So this.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So educational activity, and educational activity for them to take responsibility of their cigarette butts, in the sense that, you know, you cannot have facilities for everything. You cannot go at the top of the mountain and place trash bins. So for some tourists that happen to be there to have their trash bin, you know, people need to learn that they have to take their trash back, and the same applies for cigarette butts. And then this is where some small problematic solutions have been generated, because Professor Skoulas, I think he was personally involved in that some years ago. A lot of initiatives hand out, because also in general our habits are based, and our trainings, even the children today, I ask, what kind of presents are we gonna get? You know, it's based on receiving something, okay? That you participate in an educational activity and you expect to receive something, I don't know what, a gift, a t-shirt, a cap, gloves, something, okay? And for smoking, people would receive, I don't know, a paper ashtray, okay? And then I remember Professor Skoulas saying this some years ago, that this actually is very problematic, because in the end the smokers put this in the sun, they smoke, and then they leave it there, like magically some creatures from some other planet, will come and pick them up, which is not the case. So handing out single-use ashtrays again generates a problem. And this is why we have been discussing a lot that at least if you give, you have to really think very well what you hand out as freebies or as gadgets to participants of any kind of awareness-raising activities. And then if you want to give them a portable ashtray, at least to be a multi-use. An ashtray that someone will, put their cigarette butts back there and then take them back home and discard them properly wherever. So even the tiny little details need to be taken care of in order not to convey a wrong message that, you can put them there and leave them there.
This is a big issue.
I'm sorry, and you can give ideas also. You don't have to provide people with everything.
Yeah.
For example, I've seen lots of people, specifically this summer, carrying like half of the plastic water bottles, cleaning the beach while they were also swimming and sunbathing and everything. So, I mean, you can use plastic, like reuse it, making it half of it an ashtray, and then figure out a way to
This summer I saw also people doing that. Yes, I saw that for the first time also in remote places in Greece, which is very good. We have to finish in a while. What is important, since you mentioned the gadgets, and we have to be careful also ourselves in that, there are two things. The one is that the gadget should not be a single use. The second is, should we give something back? In my point of view, we should not,
And in my
because
point of view.
it is a kind of bribing. All the times, incentive. No incentive. Incentive not. It is not necessarily that it's a material incentive. It has to be an immaterial value. And this is a little by little something we have to insist on, because everybody is asking
It's a
for
cultural thing.
incentives. Incentives, yes, there is a limit of what is incentive and what is paying back.